And so with the bench dips, while you might be on the right track, you're on the wrong train, and this one's headed to Snap City. What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. What you see behind me is a bunch of different tricep exercises. Many of which you probably recognize because you've either done them in the past or you're still doing them today. However, after today's video, you're going to want to get rid of a few of them. So I'm going to help you to rank them from the worst to the best so that you're left with only the best tricep exercises that are going to deliver the gains that you're after. So as we begin our ranking process here, it's important to qualify what goes into the ranking because there's many factors and they all sort of weight differently. The first thing you're going to find is that these exercises have to have some ability to create some overload, right? Even though we're not picking these based on strength benefits, we're really driving them off of hypertrophy. We know that gains in strength will drive hypertrophy, so you have to be able to overload these exercises to rank pretty high. The second thing we want to make sure is it hitting all of the functions of the muscle in question? Here with the triceps, we have 3 different heads. We want to see if we can account for all 3 of them. The final thing is the exercise actually safe? A lot of people will veer towards any exercise in the pursuit of gains. Here on this channel, as always, I'm going to have to consider safety. We're going to do just that. And so we're going to start the list as we always do from the bottom up. Yeah, I get it. I know what the title is. It's best to worst, but it's my video. And so we start off at the bottom of the triceps barrel here with our first exercise, the standing dumbbell power bomb. Now somebody might know this exercise as the standing overhead dumbbell extension. The fact is, it is not one of my favorites, and there's an alternative that I will show you later that is definitely better than this. What I don't like about this move is that you have 2 things going on here. Number 1, the position of the shoulder to even perform the exercise. You literally have to get into internal rotation at the shoulder in order to place the dumbbell behind your head. And speaking about your head, good luck not hitting it on the way up and down on every single repetition. There's simply better ways to attack the long head here. This is not one of them. For that reason, it gets the first big red X. Which brings us to our second exercise here in the worst category, and it's the cross-face tricep extension. Now, ever since I first saw this exercise in Arnold's Encyclopedia Bodybuilding and actually tried it many years ago, my hate for the exercise actually has only grown. It comes down once again to the position of the body in performing the exercise. Look, we know that triceps are worked through extension of the elbow, but we can do that out of so many positions. This one here is another one that places the shoulder into that internal rotation position. As a matter of fact, so much so that if I were to just sit up from the bench, you can see that I'm in the impingement testing position that I would put somebody in if they came into a physical therapy office. You don't want to get in this position and then add a dumbbell into your hand on top of it. There's many other ways that we can get elbow extension here, guys. This is not one of my favorite, and for that reason, I give it also the big red X. And that brings us to our third and final exercise in the worst category here. And for this, my sights are set squarely on the bench dip. And this is an exercise I've covered many times before, and I just recently did so again in an appearance on Live with Kelly and Ryan. And it's simply the fact that the exercise may be of good intention, but oftentimes bad execution. When you place your hands forward on the bench, as many of us do, including myself many years ago, until I learned better, this places your shoulder into a vulnerable position. You're literally throwing the head of the humerus into the anterior shoulder capsule on the descent of every single rep. If you make the modification, however, to getting your hands turned outwards, as I show them here, and get your chest back, you're going to get the external rotation that makes the exercise much better. The fact is, many of us don't perform it this way, especially those who haven't seen my video on this before, and for that reason, guys, I have to throw this into the bottom category. And for that matter, since we've been naming exercises, this one has another name too. It's called the rotator cuff ripper. And with that, I get to break out my blue marker as we move our way up the rankings into the better category. And the first exercise we're going to take a look at here is the rope push away or the tricep push away. Now this is a good exercise. However, it's the physics of the exercise that kind of take it down a couple notches. We know that in order to keep the tension high on a muscle, you want to have that line of resistance perpendicular to the moving segment if we can. In this case, our forearm is where we're targeting. And the line of resistance is the cable itself. And you can see that when we get to the bottom of the exercise, those two are almost parallel to each other, meaning we don't have a lot of resistance on the triceps in the peak contracted state. On top of it, this tends to be one of those momentum exercises. A lot of times, we'll get our lats involved, we'll get our core involved, get a little bit of forward leaning involved. All of these things take a little bit away from the exercise, making it our first in the better category, and we're going to give it the blue circle for that reason. Which brings us to the second exercise in the better category, and this is a good exercise once again, but in its most basic form here, it has some limitations, and we're talking about the tricep pushdown. And whether you perform this with a straight bar or a rope, the limitations are still the same. We're talking once again about the physics of the movement, not lining up and giving us the most we can get out of the exercise, especially considering the fact that I'm going to show you a variation you could do later on that will. Not to mention, elbow position matters here. As the elbows start to flare more and more out to the side, as they are on any type of overhand pushdown, you're going to start to involve other muscles, particularly the chest, which is going to take some of the effort away from the triceps and limit the growth that you're seeking there. For that reason, guys, the basic pushdown is going to fall into our better category. And that brings us to the third and final exercise in our better category here, and we're talking about our next bodyweight exercise. It's the diamond cutter push-up. And if you watched my video on the chest rankings, you saw that I placed the basic push-up in the same very spot. Why? For the very same reason. The ease of execution. The fact that there's a lack of stimulus here if you could do too many of these. Guys, if these are standalone exercises, they're not going to provide the hypertrophy stimulus that you're looking for, which is one of the main criteria that I placed in this exercise ranking from the very beginning. If you can bang out 30 or 40 diamond cutter push-ups, or even 25, you're simply not being challenged enough in this exercise to get the gains that you're looking for from it, when we know that there are other variations of the same push-up exercise that are much more difficult and more challenging. Not to mention the fact that the arm position here on the traditional diamond cutter is going to keep your elbows out in front of your body, which is going to limit the activation of the long head. That's something I can fix later on. And finally, the diamond hand placement on the floor here can be challenging for some that have wrist mobility issues. For all of these reasons, guys, the diamond cutter push-up concludes our category here of better, meaning good exercises, just not good enough. And with that, now we move on to the next category, the better still category. And I get to break out my yellow marker. And the first exercise here is, guess what? Another push-up. It's the Cobra Push Up. And here I get a chance to explain exactly why I prefer this. I mentioned in the last exercise that with the diamond cutter push-up, the arms were maintained in position out in front of the body. The less we get into extension relative to the torso, the less of the long head we get into a fully contracted state. The Cobra Push-Up fixes that. You can see that we place ourselves a little bit more forward, and we're finishing in a position with the arms tightly tucked to our sides and more into extension relative to our torso. This is a good thing to get a more complete tricep contraction. The second thing it does is it actually takes a little bit of the chest out of the equation. So instead of dominating with the chest, we're going to place the brunt of the move on the triceps, which is going to make it a more demanding tricep exercise. That's a good thing when it's tricep growth that you're after. The final thing is that the hand positioning on the floor here is much more kind to those that have those wrist mobility issues, and for all these reasons, it's obvious why the Cobra push-up is the better push-up when it's the tricep gains that you're after. And so while we're talking about improvements of exercises, making them better exercises, let's move on to that next version of the tricep pushdown. It's the reverse grip pushdown, because we're talking about a better exercise. Why? Even though you have to use potentially a little less weight here, the end effect of what's happening with the triceps is going to increase the effectiveness of the exercise. And that's because what the reverse grip provides us is a better ability to get activation of the long head of the triceps once again. We know that anytime we extend the elbow, we're going to hit the medial and lateral head of the triceps, but if we can get that arm more adductor or tightly tucked to our sides and approaching more extension, in other words, bringing them back behind us, the more long head activation and contraction we can get. For all these reasons, guys, a simple change in hand positioning doesn't just take the push down and make it a better exercise, but it turns it from a blue one to a yellow one as a better still selection. And let's keep rolling here with the exercise improvements, because we talked about the tricep push away. Do we have something that's better than that? Or in this category, better still? And we do. It's the overhead rope extension. See, the setup is the same, the machine is the same, but the performance of the exercise is entirely different. Instead of targeting some point out in front of you, you should be targeting some point up above you in terms of the finish position. Because you can see, if we go back to the physics once again, that when we finish here, we finish as perpendicular as we can to our forearm with that cable. Meaning that when our elbows are extended and we want the most tension possible on the triceps, we're actually getting it here. And with the triceps solely in focus, the weight you'll be able to use won't be so much that it will overcome your core and cause you to lose your balance. For all these reasons, the overhead rope extension with the hands traveling up rather than out is going to land it on a place higher up on our rankings of the best tricep exercises. And last up in our better still category is another one of those exercises named after somebody else. In this case, it's the JM press, named after J.M. Blakely. And this is a cross between a skull crusher and a close grip bench press. Two exercises that we traditionally are able to load up pretty well. You get actually an additional benefit from the JM press. A little bit of momentum, because the way we drop the dumbbells down is we're targeting our shoulders rather than our forehead. And instead of keeping the strict positioning of our elbow throughout, we're able to let the arm float in space to accommodate that dumbbell path. And in doing so, the extra momentum allows us to push a little bit more weight. The exercise can be a little bit demanding on some that have some elbow issues. However, I find that if you simply switch to a neutral grip positioning on the dumbbells like I do here, a lot of those elbow problems are alleviated. The fact is, this is a solid exercise for creating solid triceps growth, and it's one that you should try if you have not already. It is the JM press, and it concludes our better still category. And so now moving on and moving up, we take out the green marker to indicate that we're taking a step up the rankings now to the almost best category. Not the best, but the almost best. And right off the bat, I'm going to make the hairs on the back of some people's necks stand up because the exercise I'm going to include in this category is the dumbbell kickback. Now a lot of you are thinking, but I thought you said the criteria was an exercise you could progressively overload on. That's one of the criteria. You also have to, as I mentioned, favor the exercises that allow the triceps to reach a completely contracted state, meaning all three heads, medial, lateral, and long head. And the dumbbell kickback is one of the very few exercises that actually allows us to get that tricep into its fully contracted state, because we have to get the elbow back behind the body. Not just in an extended elbow position, but behind the body as well. This does a better job than anything else. And though I mentioned the fact that the exercise weight is going to have to be lowered here, remember, your triceps cannot read the number on the side of the dumbbell, but they feel the tension they're being placed under with whatever load is in your hand. Guys, the dumbbell kickback provides us the opportunity to stimulate a good triceps contraction, which is going to ultimately allow you to complement the bigger exercises to create the growth that you're looking for. This belongs in the almost best category. Sometimes a simple change in setup is enough to take an exercise from a lower category to a better category because of improved efficacy and safety. That's what happens here when we take the dumbbell power bomb and go from a standing position to an incline position. You see, when we set ourselves up on a bench, all the issues I had with the exercise that placed it in the worst category are actually nullified. The dumbbell no longer even comes close to hitting the back of our head or neck on the way down. We realize that the elbow positioning is key. We can get them out in front of our body, alleviating any of the concerns I had in terms of the position of the shoulders in the exercise. We're getting externally rotated now rather than internally rotated, which makes a big difference for those of us that have shoulder problems. For all those reasons, the incline power bomb is the version you want to stick to when you're looking for the almost best exercise options. Speaking of modifications, we can change more than just the setup of the exercise. We can actually change the position of our body during the exercise to ramp up the effectiveness of it. And when we're talking about the pushdowns, it's the rocking pushdown that does this the best. Guys, I mentioned the basic pushdown, the limitations in terms of the physics of the exercise, with the line of resistance not remaining perpendicular to your forearms throughout the exercise. With the rocking pushdown, we can actually come as close to that as we possibly can. We start with it perpendicular to our forearms, and as we lean back, we pull back with the arms, which maintains that same relationship of the cable to the forearm. A traditional pushdown gets a little easier as the arms reach full extension, which is the exact moment that you don't want it to become easier. This variation of the pushdown keeps the tension high from the beginning all the way to the end, making it a better version of the exercise and one that belongs here in the almost best category. And so now as our choices start to become limited, we have to go back to the concept of overload and why it becomes an important factor. We're going to start with the weighted upright dip. This is one of the better ways to overload the triceps. And notice I said upright dip, because if you lean too far forward, you'll place too much of the work on the chest. We want to make sure we maintain as upright and tall of a torso as possible so that as we go down and stop at that important 90-degree position, which maintains the safety of the shoulder, we're going to be pushing back up to the top with the force primarily of the triceps. Guys, this is a great exercise that we can easily strap some additional weight around our waist on to keep that overload coming. The weighted upright dip is definitely one of the classic mass builders and belongs at the top of the list here in the almost best category. And moving all the way to the top of the almost best category, the best of the almost best, we have the close grip bench press. And what this provides us is once again that obvious opportunity to create some mass in the triceps by giving us a good overload option. Yes, the chest and shoulders will certainly be contributing to the movement, but the closer hand positioning certainly shifts the load in favor of the triceps, and it gives us a great chance to push them to their limits. The close grip bench press definitely belongs at the top of the list and certainly as the best of the almost best. And with that, we made it all the way up to the top of the list with the one deserving of the green star, the best of the best, the lying tricep extension. And the reason why it gets the honors over the close grip bench press has solely to do with the starting position of the exercise. Because the starting position of the exercise allows us to recruit the long head of the triceps that the close grip bench press simply does not do as good of a job on. And because we finish in the same position, the medial and the lateral head are still getting a heavy workload here. This is the exercise that you're going to want to do if you want to get the best tricep development. If you do this with an easy bar or with a set of dumbbells, you're going to be able to reap the benefits of the exercise without having to worry about any excess strain on your wrists. If you do this exercise, guys, I promise you, you'll see the gains you've been seeking. This one here gets the green star as the best of the best for tricep exercises. And with that, the tricep exercise rankings are complete, and you've got more information now to arm yourself to make better choices when it comes to your tricep exercises and training. When it comes to exercise science, guys, we do it better than anybody else. You have to put the science behind the selection of what you do. We do that in all of our programs available over at ATHLEAN-X.com. If you found the video helpful, if you like this series, make sure you leave your comments and thumbs up below. Tell me what else you want me to cover. I'll do my best to do that for you. And also, if you haven't done so, click subscribe, turn your notifications so you never miss a video in this series or any other we put out in the days and weeks ahead. All right, guys, see you soon.